I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Charlene. Welcome to Empowered, Life Lessons of Everyday Women.
Each episode, you're going to meet an amazing woman who has struggled through challenges both in her home life and work life and has become very successful. Meet Jasmine B. Choose growth. Jasmine knew she wanted to make a difference in the healthcare industry, but not just as a healthcare worker. After experiencing the difficulties helping her grandmother and realizing the disconnect between patients when they left the hospital, she founded NaviNurses. Learn how she is making a difference. So, grab a cup of coffee, get in a comfy chair, and let's talk to Jasmine. Welcome, Jasmine. We're happy to have you join us today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with both of you today.
So, if you had a chance to go back and give your 20-year-old self a little piece of advice, what might that be?
Oh my gosh, if I could go back and give myself advice as a 20-year-old, I think there would be a lot I could say. But I think the one thing I would want her to know is that it's all going to turn out okay. And that everything in life happens truly for a reason. And, we have these opportunities to take what happens to us and we get to decide how we grow and evolve from the experiences we have. And if we always choose growth, then we're always going to end up where we're meant to be.
Oh, I like that. Choose growth. I like that. So you decided to go into nursing. What made you decide that was the path you wanted to take?
I actually never intended on becoming a nurse. I know there are so many nurses that they've grown up with so many nurses in the family and they've just always wanted to do it. That was not ever me. So unlike many other nurses who they've grown up knowing that they've wanted to be nurses or they've got lots of nurses in the family and were inspired to become a nurse, I never thought that this would be the path I take. I've always known deep inside that I meant to make a difference in healthcare at a big level. I just didn't know what that looked like. And as a college student, I just thought, oh, well, policy is the way to go. This is how we make a big difference in population health and the health of really large groups of people. And so I was applying to law school, and that was the path I was going to take. But my grandmother was diagnosed with head and neck cancer. And essentially, the physicians in the hospital told us, you can either put her in skilled nursing or you can take her home. And my family and I toured 3 skilled nursing facilities, and we said there is absolutely no way we're putting her in one of these facilities. We're going to take her home. And we didn't really realize what that meant. Right. All we knew is that we wanted to provide her with good care and make sure she was happy and loved and well supported. And we knew that we would be able to provide that for her, but we didn't know what it meant to be a family caregiver to that level. She was going home with a tracheostomy, so she was breathing through a hole in her neck. She was getting food through a tube in her belly, and we didn't realize that was like a 24/7 job, and that Medicare only covered a few hours of nursing care a week. That's it, and the rest was on us. And so this experience taught me 2 things. It taught me that, oh my gosh, I love caring for human beings. I love caring for people, and I think nursing is the route that I meant to be taking. And it also really opened my eyes to the gaps in healthcare. Like, we think what we're given and what insurance covers is enough for us, and it's really what we need, when in fact it's really not. And what I'm building now is hopefully a solution to a problem that I experienced so intimately.
Firsthand.
Not only is it the physical part of it, like just the what you have to do, the physical part of it, but there's also an emotion component, which doesn't even get covered in that Medicare amount. And that's where the family comes in, and being in a skilled nursing situation could be that lacks at least the family connection.
Right. Well, you're supporting everybody, right? You're supporting not only the patient, but the family as well. And it's an entire unit that needs to be supporting that patient.
Exactly. And I think, when you decide to bring someone home and care for them yourself, rather than putting them in skilled nursing or giving them other options for care, when you take on the role of being a caregiver, it impacts and influences your other role. So my role as a granddaughter was completely kind of like sidelined, and becoming a caregiver there's almost all these feelings that come up of like frustration and anger and resentment even sometimes, because that role is now gone as how you've always known it to be with that person. And it's a lot more challenging than I think people realize.
I think you're voicing it really well because I have, even though I've never been in that situation, I can feel that just from what you've experienced is how difficult that must be.
So you started your own business related to nursing. Can you tell us about that business? And I think we know it's kind of what motivated you, but can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I was working in the hospital. By the time I hit 10 years, I was like, okay, I've had this idea. I need to get out. And essentially, what I had realized was as a charge nurse, especially at nighttime, we would always get phone calls from patients who were discharged during the day. And they would say, I've got my papers, but I can't remember what the nurse said. And there was a problem here. And they would have all of these problems and they would have nowhere to go for help. And they thought that they would just call back to the unit where they were discharged from to get things fixed. And that in combination with, my patients were always tugging at my scrubs and saying, hey, will you come home with me? When you care for someone in the hospital, you're caring for them in their most vulnerable moments. You learn everything about them, which family members they like and which ones that raise their blood pressure, right? You learn all of their idiosyncrasies, when they like to eat, what are their favorite foods, but you also learn what worked for them, what didn't, what was their entire medical trajectory during their stay. And so, who better than the nurses in the hospital caring for someone to help get them reacclimated outside of the hospital? That nurse can be their best advocate for their primary care physician. They're all their specialists, and even helping to support the family in the new transition of maybe if they're leaving the hospital, a different person than the person that they came in as. And so for me, the idea of using the nurse from the hospital, but also allowing them to work for people in their homes, really helping to bridge these really fragile transitions of care was like, okay, I think this is something that we need to be doing. We're not doing it, but I think there's something here. And after working in the hospital, I worked through COVID. I spent a good majority of the pandemic still working at the bedside. And I got to a point where I was just like, my soul is gone. I was so like soul crushed from working on a unit where we cared for people with COVID. And I was like, I need a break and I can't do this anymore. It was really, really difficult for me. And so taking the leap to even step out, there was a lot of guilt for me. I felt like I was deserting my colleagues by stepping out to build something. But what I realized quickly was that what I was building was actually healing them. And so I started and I really haven't looked back.
Oh, good. Well, it's interesting because you're really talking about seeing the patients as a person and not a sheet of paper or their chart or whatever. And everybody wants to be seen and heard. That's really powerful. So I understand you're getting your PhD, so you don't have enough things on your plate here. What are you getting your PhD in, and what made you decide to go back to get it?
Yeah, so the decision to start my doctorate was actually before I started my business. And it fell back in line with this concept of how do I make a difference in healthcare at a bigger level. And I had become discontent with just caring for 4 or 5 people a day. I wanted to figure out how I could care for. So I just decided one day to start scrolling on LinkedIn and see what were the qualifications of people who were running hospitals. What was the CEO's background? What was the CNO's background? And I started to realize that a lot of these nurse leaders, these executives had their PhDs. So I was like, okay, I guess this is the next step. I need to go to school and start my PhD. And at the time I had a whole other idea. I've always been this person with lots of ideas. I see a lot of the problems and I'd like to fix them. So I had a whole different problem that I had started my doctorate work with. But along the way with building my business, I was able to win a $1.5 million grant to actually study our work. And so I've taken out a segment of this massive study that we put together. And that's what I'm using for my doctoral work. And essentially what I started to see almost immediately was how happy our nurses were. Mind you, our nurses work in a hospital. They do this on the side. So they're actually working more, but they're actually happier. And I was like, gosh, there's something here. And
why do you think they were happier? What do you think that connection was?
I think there's a lot of different reasons. And part of the grant that we won, we explored understanding this through qualitative and quantitative research. On the numeric quantitative side, what we found is our nurses are actually less burnt out, and their experience of burnout is entirely different than if they just worked in a hospital. When we talked to them and actually interviewed them about why do they enjoy this? Why did they start this? They were looking for things like flexibility, autonomy. They wanted connection. Like having connection with people was really important to them. And they spoke a lot about how chaotic it is in hospitals and how they feel like they're not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing for people. And when I think about it, when I think back to my days as a nurse, I would leave the hospital some days and all I could think about were the things I missed or I didn't do in time. And I would beat myself up over them. As a nurse in this sort of role, where you're going in and you're caring for people one-on-one, you walk out of your shift and you're like, oh my gosh, here are all the things I did for them. And so
different. You flipped it.
exactly. There's been this flip. And just imagine if you were to work every single day and you walk away not even thinking about all the good things you did because all you can see are the things you missed or you didn't get to. That can weigh on a person. And by being able to flip this, it's like, it's amazing to see the difference.
That creates a great visual. It really does. So, you're going to school, you're running your own business. Do you have a work-life balance? Or, how have you managed that?
It's a really interesting question because I don't necessarily know if it's balance, but I like the word harmony.
Oh,
Where's the harmony between the things that make me happy? And I think what we do in the world, like our purpose as humans, is intimately connected to the work that we do. And so I think that there's a connection there that we have to acknowledge. It's interesting because working 3/12s in the hospital, I was actually way more tired than I am now with a pack schedule, working over 80 hours a week just on like the business itself. I'm not nearly as tired. And I think it's because I enjoy it and I love it. And I get to create my own schedule. Like I can wake up early and go to yoga and stop and take a break in the middle of the day and go shopping or whatever. I'm creating my own schedule and it allows me to meet all of my needs. And granted, I am a lot busier, but I think it's also allowed me to start to schedule and be more mindful. So I actually have a schedule that I pencil in all the things and I have just small requirements for myself. 1 or 2 friends a week. I have to see one mentor and I have to do one thing that's good for myself and my body, like a sound healing. And I have to work out at least 3 times a week. So actually scheduling things, I never took the time to do that before, but now I am.
now you can. So it's interesting. You talked about, even though you're working more hours, you're actually more invigorated than you were before. And it makes me think in terms of, people talk about being an extrovert or an introvert and what makes them motivated to do things. And whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you have found the things that make you inspired. You're happy, even though you're working more hours, it's fulfilling what you need inside. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, and it causes you to grow because I think about myself and who I am now versus who I was even just 6 months ago. And becoming an entrepreneur pushes you as a human to grow and get outside of your comfort zone. I've always identified as being an introvert like my entire life. I talked to 5 people in high school and that was it. Like I was so shy. But I realized as an entrepreneur, if I don't step out and talk and meet people, I'm going to hold my business back. And I don't want to be the reason why my business doesn't succeed. And so I think there are labels for things and we can identify or see the label and we just say that that's who we are. But it's really important to also think about who we can become.
It sounds to me like you've recognized your strengths and your weaknesses, and you've taken some of those weaknesses and turned them into strengths because of the joy or the harmony that you have for wanting to be successful in business. So you've pushed yourself outside of your comfort zone. But obviously there's things that you're good at and there's things that you're maybe not. How do you identify those and how do you get support in those areas?
There's a lot of things I'm not good at. And there's a lot of things I struggle with. Like I struggle with shiny ball syndrome. I don't know if you've heard of that before.
No, what's that?
I can get distracted really easy. So I have all these ideas all the time. And it's like, oh, there's another shiny ball. Oh, there's another one. Like you get all these ideas for things. Like I definitely struggle with shiny ball syndrome. And I know that I have a vision and I have this, mission that I'm on, but I know I can't get there by myself. And I know I need people who are so much smarter than me in different areas that can help come aboard and help me build what I'm building. Like, I'm so lucky. I look at my team now and I think about some of the most recent hires I've made. And the person who's building our technology, for example, like he's been a CEO, he's been a COO, he's built 3 AI companies and sold them all. And he's building my tech, right? And I have this person in operations who's taken a company from like 5 million to 300 million in operations. And I am so grateful to have them because they have so much knowledge and wisdom and the things that I don't know. It's
Right.
just putting us all together and making us like come together and work to build something even more magical together.
That's interesting. So I know we've talked to other people about cultures within organizations. What type of a culture are you trying to build with the people that are working for you?
There's this book called The Circle Way. I'm not sure if you've heard of it,
No?
but they talk about how, as human beings, we've evolved and we used to come around and share stories and we would operate around a fire and we would come together as a circle where everyone has an equal voice at the table and we all have like a shared convergence and no one is better than the other. And that's a really important philosophy that I bring, hopefully, to my team is that everyone's voice matters. Everyone has an important role to play. I don't see myself any different than anyone on my team, whether they answer the phones, whether they provide the care, whether they're helping to build the technology. We just have different roles. And that's what I really want to instill in ourselves as a team and how we collaborate and work with each other, just an open transparency with respect and kindness for the value that other people bring in. And that's really important to me, but also being ignited by this passion to make a difference. Like everyone on my team is motivated by social impact and the work that we know we're making and the difference we can potentially make in the future for even more people.
That's great.
It is great. It's interesting. So you touched on something that Charlene and I were talking about a little bit earlier before you got on. And that was there seems to be a theme with the women that we've talked to that are in leadership that have been successful. And it's this positive culture that either they create or they provide. And when people leave an organization, it's usually because the environment isn't healthy anymore.
Or their value
Or their value is
not being recognized, whether they're, sorting the mail or they're, making copies. There's a value to every part and component. And when you were talking, I was listening and hearing the word value in my head. That's what you value everybody for what they bring to the table. And it's so important in a work environment to have that respect and kindness. I'm a big respect and kindness girl. I think it goes a long, long way in changing just the temperament of the world and everything else that's involved.
Yeah.
So you are managing people and you're managing your client base. So what are some of the challenges that you've come across that you might be able to share trying to balance both?
Yeah, I think you can sit and read all the leadership books you want and study the theories, but actually being a leader in practice is really hard. And I don't necessarily learn everything through the books and through the podcasts and through all the things. You learn so much from experience. You learn from making mistakes. You learn from hiring the wrong people. You learn from all the things. And again, it kind of goes back to that idea of how do you grow and move through all of these experiences? People are the most important part of whatever it is that you do. And when you take care of people and you see them and you treat them right, they can flourish. And it's so beautiful and magical to watch, but it takes time and effort. You have to be able to hold them accountable. You have to set clear metrics for them to work towards and have the ability to have open dialogue that maybe it's not always easy to have. Difficult conversations aren't fun, but they're going to help either the business and or the person or all people involved grow when you actually have them. And for the business I'm building, I've learned that it's okay that people aren't there the whole time. I think in the beginning, you're so idealistic, like, oh, I'm going to hire these people and I'm going to bring them aboard and they're going to be with me and I'm just going to build this company with them by my side the whole time. But that's not the case because people are really good at sometimes certain things and certain growth periods. And that's okay. I think that was a big realization for me of people will come and go. And if I can leave them better by the time they leave, or there's something for them to hopefully grow from, and my business is better, then it's a win, right? Like that's a win.
And it's interesting they said that. We had another interview which we did, and it was almost the same identical comment. You know, she happened to be in a different industry, but she said, if I can help people grow and I can help them build themselves and go further in their lives, that's okay, because they're going to move on anyhow, and sometimes they won't, but sometimes they will. And she was happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that personal connection that you keep talking about, which is awesome. So you obviously have a lot of goals and objectives in your company, but you've got a lot of personal connection with your client base. I don't know how large your organization is, but I wonder if you've had experience where you've got people that have had to take maybe a leave of absence for whatever reason, and you've got a gap to fill. How do you go about filling that? The impression I have right now of you, Jasmine, is that, okay, I'll take up the slack, but you can't do that all the time. So I was just wondering how you manage that.
Yeah. Well, I think when you start building something from scratch, you wear all the hats in the very beginning. Like
Correct.
You literally do everything from accounting, finance, accounts receivable, like marketing, all the things. And as you grow, you start to find people to come in and take over some of the roles. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And if they don't, then you've got to kind of slide back in and take over that role. And so I feel like in the position where I'm coming from, I've started with everything, doing everything. And I'm slowly getting rid of things. And that's 100% my goal. How can I continue to shed the roles and responsibilities that someone else can do so much better than me? That's my goal. There's still gaps in the meantime. Like even if there's someone that has to step away or take leave of absence, there's still gaps. Like I'm still a little startup. So I just work really hard to find resources that can help me out. One of the best ways that I've been able to grow is actually using fractional support. I've hired fractional HR executives, a fractional controller, people who are really experienced and they can bring a lot of wisdom, but in a short amount of hours, like 10 hours a week. And it's enough to help guide and support me until I can get to the point where I can hire someone full time.
So I love this idea. I have never heard of it before, fractional support. Can you talk a little bit about where you find these people? I mean, is there a separate organization? Just talk about it, because that's a fascinating concept.
Yeah, so a lot of it has actually happened through networking in my local community. People are always very quick to ask, how can you help? Or how can we help? What can we do for you? And I think having those conversations, here's what I need in my business. Do you know someone who can do this? And typically what I found is there's actually a large group of people who they've done the whole corporate career and now they step away and they work with a handful of businesses at a time, just providing fractional support. Most of the fractional leaders that I have had in the past and those that I currently have, they have come through word of mouth, through my own network of people around me. And it's everything from marketing, HR, sales, finance, operations, like every aspect of a business, you can actually bring in people fractionally, and they'll come in and they'll either do some of the work. If they're good at kind of getting in the weeds and working with nothing, they can come in and do work. Sometimes they come in and they're more advisory. They're coming at a different skill set where they just want to come in and give you all the advice, but you have to go and do all of the things. But having someone who's tenured to come in and help support our growth has been really instrumental for us.
So have any of those fractional people, have they actually come on board and become part of your organization and left that fractional position? Or I was just wondering if any of them just, they fall in love with your business and have made the move over.
We have one that just converted recently, which is great. And he's on the tech side. So he started off just fractionally working 20 hours a week with us. And we just quickly realized he was a great, great human, so smart and incredibly capable. And we just didn't want to continue without him. And so he signed his offer letter this last week, and we're really excited.
Oh, that's exciting.
And now he's got some skin in the game as far as he's part of the growth. And that is more exciting because, that section is kind of pushed to the side and not on your shoulders anymore.
So I have a question about, so you're working your NaviNurses kind of work between the hospital and the home care. So you made it sound, and I want to make sure I'm clear, that some of these nurses are still working at the hospital, but then they have like a part-time gig, so to speak, outside the hospital. Was that hard for you to set up with the hospitals themselves? Were they receptive to this idea, or were they more of, hands-off kind of thing?
That's a good question, because I think what we're doing and how we're approaching it is definitely different and unique. Traditionally, we know that at least 25% of nurses already work a second job. But what they're doing is they're working at 2 different hospitals oftentimes, which is really stressful. If I can help a nurse by giving them a flexible job that they can pick up when they want, they get to choose their hours, all of the things, and they can make more money, and then also go back to their hospital even happier. That's what I'm hoping I can talk to hospitals about in the future is, look, when your nurses work for us on the side, they actually come back happier. And what that means is less burnt out and happier nurses translates to financial metrics for hospitals. Like, we know that more burned out clinicians, that translates into longer lengths of stays. It translates into higher mortality. It translates into all of these other really important things that hospitals actually care about. So I'm hoping one day that there could be a greater opportunity for collaboration with healthcare systems when they can see the impact it's having on nurses, but then also thinking about the impact of how our work can impact their clients, their patients as well. So there's opportunity for both, but nurses work more than one job, and why not give them one that helps them remember why they became a nurse in the first place and makes them feel happy and joyful. And maybe they're caring for someone down the street from them that they begin to create this amazing bond with. This is the way healthcare should be.
I guess I didn't realize that most nurses in hospitals worked 2 different jobs. I'd like to know if that's because of their pay or because of the shortage of nurses or a combination of both.
I think nurses work multiple jobs because of pay. Like, they would love to make more money and be compensated well for it. And when you think about it, when you work as a nurse, you're usually working 3 days a week. So you're like, okay, I'm working 3 days a week. Well, what am I going to do with the rest of my week? I have 4 more days. I can still do stuff and I can still be productive and make an impact. And what's great about our model is they don't have to make an impact for another 12 hours or 6 hours. They can go and pick up an hour-long shift with someone or 2 hours.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a really nice thing for them to have. We hear a lot about a nursing shortage. And there's some pushback here because there's not necessarily a shortage of nurses. There's a shortage of nurses who are willing to continue working in the work environments that we currently experience. It's really hard to go and work in an environment where you feel like you're not doing the best thing for every life you touch. When you don't have the resources, when you don't have the time, it can feel really defeating. And so there comes a point where even pay doesn't.
It's not a compensator for that. Absolutely. It really sounds like you're finding that balance between letting people experience why they got into nursing to begin with, right? The patient connection and doing better, as well as being, you're providing a wonderful service. I love this concept.
So I would love to ask you what you think your biggest life lesson is, and if you have any other advice for our listeners who are maybe not in healthcare, but are looking for life advice.
I think I probably have a few answers. One is kind of funny, at least I think it is, but I feel like I went to all girls schools and I was always like afraid of dating and all the things, but I feel like building a business has taught me so much that I can apply towards dating and like relationships, which is like a great like life lesson for me. Building the business, I've just learned a lot about relationships and just like all of the things. But for me, probably my greatest lesson as of this point is the moment you can step into your fullest authentic self, the more empowered you will feel. And I think along the way, when you're creating a business, people have lots of advice to give you, and some of them want you to do things their way. It's so important to follow your intuition and your inner knowingness and always stay true to what is so important to you. And the more authentic you are, the more you speak your mind and do the things that are important to you, it's almost like the alignment just clicks and you can flourish so greatly. But it's important to not be afraid of stepping into that space, even if you are aware that people may and will judge you. You've got to get over that. Like when you can step into yourself, that's where the magic happens.
Can I ask you one more question? Where do you think you found the strength to kind of become this person? You said when you were in high school, you talked to 5 people, but you are very confident and you're very centered and you know yourself well. Where did you find this confidence?
I think it's always been there, but I didn't have good clarity around my purpose. When I figured out what my purpose was and what it is that I'm up to in the world and the things that are important for me to accomplish in my lifetime, then it's almost like everything else falls away. When you can connect with your purpose, then you know what you've got to do and nothing can stop you or get in your way.
That was huge. Thank you so much for sharing.
Jasmine, this has been fantastic. There's a lot here to unfold and unpack. We're really excited about sharing this with our listeners. And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no, thank you.
To our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Empowered, Life Lessons of Everyday Women. We would really appreciate if you could leave us a rating or a review. If you have any challenges or questions you are facing, we want to hear from you as we value your input and suggestions. And if you have a compelling story or life lesson you would like to share, please connect with us at empoweredlifelessons@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, other social media platforms, or visit us at empoweredlifelessons.com.
In our next episode, hear how Shweta V helps people find a balanced, holistic approach to health and happiness using Ayurvedic medicine.